This is the Safe House Project webinar series. My name is Alia Azariah. I'm Director of Aftercare for Safe House Project. And this is this is the fourth year, about the end of our fourth year of our webinar series. We bring these conversations to you every single month. They're also hosted on our YouTube if you have missed any of them, or on our website at safehouseproject.org/webinars. So in case you missed last month or any of the previous, you can go back there and take a look at most of them. We like to bring these conversations forward because in my role and in the lateral roles at Safe House Project, we get a lot of questions about different things related to survivor care, related to how to do things well. And we notice that a lot of you as community-based programs are seeking the same information. And everyone is in kind of a different stage of learning about each of these topics. So we love to be able to bring together these conversations to show it's not us that are necessarily the experts on every single thing, but we know some of those people who are having these conversations at a more advanced level and bringing them forward to you all so that you can get to know who might be a good resource and have these conversations in a really transparent way instead of just one-on-one conversations like we have in the past. So really excited about today's panel specifically. Before I go into introducing our panelists, I want to set up this specific webinar. I am really excited about it. It's something that Victoria and I have talked about for a couple of years now, getting to do this. But one thing I've noticed is as we're bringing forward conversations with people with lived experience, as we're bringing forward conversations about congregate care, we often have people with lived experience feeding into our program models, but we rarely get to talk about what that was experience of being in congregate care as a person with lived experience was really like. Our thoughts about not just being people with lived experience of exploitation, but people with lived experience of having lived in these like trafficking, exploitation specific environments, and getting to kind of talk about lessons learned, things that we're glad that we've understood now. And so I've been really excited about bringing this specific conversation forward for quite some time and looking at who would be just the best friends of mine to be able to bring forward to have. So really excited about what we're going to be talking about today, and going to introduce my friends as we do that. We may have one more person jumping on. She's kind of handling some health stuff, so it's been a little touch and go for her, but hopefully she'll be able to join us. And if not, we will be thinking about her and hoping that she gets well. But our two incredible panelists are Andrea Hipwell. Andrea has been a dedicated member of the Wellspring Living team since 2009. Oh, there you are. Hi, Victoria. Since 2009, and currently serves as the Senior Director of Adult Services, having graduated from the Wellspring Living Women's Residential Program herself. Andrea never imagined that she would have the privilege of supporting others as they transition out of the same challenging life that she's left behind. She's highly skilled in areas such as trauma-informed care, survivor leadership, boundaries, strength-based care, and promising practices. And her unwavering determination to advocate for change in survivor leadership has earned her recognition, as has her relentless commitment to helping survivors build new lives. So we're really grateful to Andrea for being here to share her professional experience in this space. Wellspring is definitely one of those leaders in the congregate care space and has been for a really long time. So really grateful to have you here, Andrea. Secondly, we have Victoria Bounds. Victoria is a survivor of human trafficking and a woman in long-term recovery from substance abuse, whose personal journey has become a powerful testimony for helping others heal and thrive. She's a passionate advocate, a mentor, and a leader in women's recovery and empowerment. She's earned a master's degree in health and human promotion and certified as a North Carolina peer support specialist. She has her KDAC. She's a recovery coach, an empowerment leader, a group coordinator, a RAP facilitator, a mentor, a friend, and a grateful believer in Christ. She's a survivor leader and a passionate advocate who draws on her own lived experience to guide her work. And in 2025, she founded the Mustard Seed Way LLC to walk alongside women in their healing journey and their recovery journeys. And a little fun fact about Victoria and I and how we know each other is we actually went through Congregate Care together within a week of each other. So have been long travelers together in this world, and I'm super excited to share this space specifically with you. And last but definitely not least, Victoria Miller. So we've got two Victorias this morning, so I'm sure we will have some confusion there. So hang with me as I point you guys out. Victoria Miller is a passionate advocate and survivor leader dedicated to creating change in the anti-trafficking field. Drawing from her lived experience, she works to raise awareness, empower survivors, and support communities in building pathways of healing and resistance. And resilience, excuse me. So thank you all for being here. Really excited to have you guys and to have this conversation. And I also just want to do a couple of other housekeeping things. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please put them in the Q&A portion. It's there on the bottom in the little pop-ups, because if you put them in the chat, I do not have a second facilitator here with us, and I will probably lose them if you put them in the chat. So you don't need to wait until the end to put them in the Q&A, just put them in there, and hopefully we will have time in the last 10 minutes to answer at least a couple of questions, and I can send those out to our panelists after as well. And for our panelists, I want to just remind you that you can answer it from your professional experience or from your lived experience, and never feel that it has to be from your lived experience by any means. You each have your own professional experience and can share from that as well, depending on how you want to show up today or what's feeling right. Because this is going to be just a little bit of a different conversation, as this is an all lived experience panel. I'm also a person with lived experience, so we've only been able to do a couple of these where we have this kind of peer conversation so openly. So I'm very excited about it. So we're going to just jump right in. And panelists, if you want to just signal to me that you have something to say by unmuting, that will help me before you speak. That will help me know kind of how to hand it over to people. But our first question is just, what are your thoughts on congregate care? What are your thoughts on congregate care in general? Go ahead, Andrea.
So the first thing that comes to mind when I think about congregate care is it's not for everyone, right? A lot of people are like, you need to go to, like, allies and people in the community, family members, you need a program. We have learned at Wellspring Living and in my time with other programs that living in community is not for everyone. And everyone doesn't need congregate care to move into a healthy life. People are surviving and thriving and never went through a program. So I think that's where we can start. You know, congregate care isn't for everybody. It's not a one size fits all. And so you really have to individualize whether people need congregate care in a community or whether maybe they can have external resources while they're living, you know, in community spaces and don't have to go to residential programs. So wanted to get us started there.
I love that. That was a great place to start. Thank you. Victoria, do either of you want to touch on that?
I agree. I don't feel that it is for everybody. And I also think that it has to do a lot with if you're going as an individual or if you're going as a mother. There is a big part in that as well. Like, is there going to be a way for me to know that my kids are safe? I feel like that's a big part of us getting, as a survivor and even as just a mother, getting a lot out of congregate care. If you don't know where your kids are going to be, or how are we, because that's literally our lifeline when we're in there. So I think that's big. Like you said, congregate care is not for everybody, and not a lot of programs are really made specifically for everybody in their journey. And I think that's big, is to really have that individual, help for every person individually. That makes it really worth it.
Yeah, to find the right fit. And that's why we need so many different type models of programs, right? And I loved what you said about the motherhood piece, because one thing that I think about is how much do we make people give up in order to access services? And if they have had to give up things like their children in order to access services, it becomes very, very difficult to focus on living harmoniously amongst other people when you have such big things that you're carrying with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I could add something to that too. I think that's something that staff don't fully understand. I know there's a question about funders later on, but I don't remember if it was Ollie or Victoria that said it, but when people are entering congregate care, everyone is new, everything is new, and you have to give people some time and some space to acclimate to that new place and people and location before you start all the intense programming and all the things. I think the other thing that I thought about was generally in congregate care, I think people think we have this magic wand, and just because participants or clients have entered our program, they just automatically magically want to work on everything tomorrow all the time. And I think we get it wrong a lot by our expectations overriding the individualized care of the people that we're serving.
Absolutely.
Okay. So as far as congregate care goes, for someone like me who is like like I'm sort of like a mix between extrovert introvert, and I found that out about myself. But for someone who has some issues with like abandonment and being a little lonely and a little bit needy every now and again, it worked out really well for me. Like, okay, I just want to share this with you. The first person who ever took me to the airport was Alia. Okay. And I'm sitting in the airport right now having this conversation with her. So this is actually kind of, I know it's a little weird, but it's a kind of a special time to kind of to reflect back on how much congregate care really did help someone like me. Now I can definitely see where someone who might be a little more introverted, where they need a little extra time to just be by themselves and to be able to just breathe for a second. And that's how they fill their cup, is to be able to take the time to just breathe and process on what's going on.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say I also definitely benefited. I mean, clearly, as much as like so many programs lack and we're all learning, we have gotten to the point we are now, each of us on this panel. And so there was something there that was helpful. Hopefully we got here with the assistance of our program and not completely in spite of it. I'm sure there's a little bit of that too at times. But I think about like the things that I learned from the other women I was in the home with, right? That I would not have learned if we hadn't had to interact together and I hadn't had to listen to other people's perspective. And like, those were life-changing conversations with my peers. There were life-changing conversations that we had, and those were very valuable. Yeah.
I agree. Those life-changing conversations, those were really good.
Yeah. And I'm going to move us to the next question. What about, and this is a question that I get asked by programs during certification visits regularly. What are your thoughts on balancing structure and dignity and choice? We know that programs have to have structure. Things cannot just be a free for all. People needs to know what's expected of them. They need to know what's safe, like what it looks like to be safe in this program. But yeah, that can come with challenges, right? What are your thoughts? Go ahead, Victoria Miller.
This is a great question. And Alia was my mentor when I was in program, and she knows my struggles that I went through being there. It's the way of having structure has to be important because a lot of the time that's us as survivors. It's our first time being around a bunch of women at once, and even being around a bunch of women and getting along and not being in competition and having to like one up everybody. And I think that that's you have to have that structure to where you're able to make everybody feel like they're heard but also not make them feel like they're being exploited all over again. And I think that there can be a thin line there, especially when it comes to, like a lot of programs, they want you to volunteer and do things, which I think is good to have you build, to have your own, I guess saying like building your life back up, because before we didn't have choices, so we need those choices when we go to program, and even feeling like you're in charge of your life again. But then with there being that structure, it can be a little hard when someone's trying to tell you something out of their role as a person in the program. And then you're feeling like, okay, well, are you talking to me like a pimp, or are you talk? Because it's kind of hard to really take that difference in, I feel. And that, I think with that comes a lot of trauma informed training. And the little problems that I went through also having children in there is having everybody have the training to where they're able to be inclusive, with everybody's things that are going on, with everybody's cultures. My children are mixed, and we ran into a lot of racial issues when we were in program, and where it was hard, where they were offering products for other, for everybody, but there weren't certain products that were for children that were, black, and different type of hair and stuff like that. And I feel like that kind of puts us in a place to where we feel kind of less than, if there isn't really that, that structure and those things that are put into place. But I do feel like it's very important to have structure, because if not, then it's going to be a free for all, and we're going to all be in there fighting, because especially being a bunch of girls, it'll be very serious.
Yeah, I also think like you brought up a great piece about the parenting piece as well, Victoria. Like it can be really difficult to be parenting people, multiple people in your case, right? But then also kind of being infantilized through like not being in full control of the kids that you're parenting because you're trying to parent them, and then there's also a program that's trying to parent them and put rules and structure around your kids and trying to like manage that. I know that that is a challenge also depending on the
Yes.
program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up, because that's, yes.
Yeah.
I feel like that's another thing that needs to be put in place too, with structure wise, is to have like, okay, if we're going to have there is a need for programs with mothers and children, just like there's a need for recovery programs with men with children, because everybody needs to have a way to keep the family together, but also know that we're all going to be kept together, and we're not going to be broken up by this program. You know what I mean? And we're going to have, there's structure in it to where there's classes offered, not just for the parent, but also what's put in place for the children. Because at the same time, like, well, when I was in program, and I'm so thankful for my program. Honestly, if it wasn't for program, I would not even be here today to even speak to anybody. But yes, I was also the first survivor there at the program, and it was a beautiful adventure for me and the director. We had a great time trying to really learn how to utilize everything and put everything into place. And me going in with 5 kids, 3 of which were teenagers at the same time, and having that in place to where you can have stuff for everybody to come together.
Yeah.
Therapy has to be important, you know what I mean? Especially in those type of settings as well.
Yeah. And we're going to touch back on that in a minute. But Andrea, reminder of what the question is. What are your thoughts on balancing structure and dignity and choice?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes up for me is relationships over rules. Right. And I came to the Wellspring Living program in 2008. And so it's been a few years since I was in a residential program as a participant. But since then, I've been direct care staff, admissions coordinator in the women's residential program. And now I get to do transitional housing and aftercare, also congregate care, but very different. That's a different webinar for a different day. Hopefully we can talk about that later. But I think so often I'm sitting in spaces and in meetings, and I know some of my colleagues are on the webinar today, so no, I'm not talking about y'all. But so often I sit in spaces where we're talking about rules and policies, and I think, have we asked her? what she needs to be safe? Have we asked her what she needs on this pass? We've spent 3 hours coming up with what she needs, but have we included her in it? Have we asked her? Because I think sometimes we overcomplicate the work. A lot of times we overcomplicate the work by excluding the people that we're serving. And we're spinning our wheels a lot because we haven't asked them the right questions. So involving residents always, relationships over rules. But I think the other thing that comes to mind is that, the staff, advocates, service providers, whatever we call ourselves, will not be around forever. And the people that we serve have lived to this moment. Victoria lived to the moment she's at with her 5 children before that director stepped into her life, and she survived well. And so sometimes I think we think all of a sudden we're going to save everybody, right? And so we put policies and procedures and rules in place, and we call it safety and protection and all the things. But guess what? We're not teaching anybody how to live on their own. So we're not teaching how to, identify if somebody's a healthy person to have a relationship, identify the safety measures I use in my home as a single woman in the city of Atlanta. Like, I think and I do it too. I am number one. I take a step back and I'm like, oh my gosh, why do I think I can do that for her? And I haven't even asked her what she needs. So I think we model ways that we protect ourselves. We model, survivors are no different than people who have not survived trafficking in a lot of ways. And I think we overthink what survivors need without including them a lot. And we look at rules over relationship way too much. And I'll be quiet now so the Victorias can talk. But those were my main things that I wanted to share about that and kind of create conversation around.
Absolutely. Thank you. Victoria, Bounce, do you want to respond to that? You don't have to if you feel like it's covered.
Honestly, I feel like it's covered.
Yeah,
I
that's
think she
totally
did a
fine.
I mean, I think she did a great job explaining.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a conversation I have with programs a lot of the time where, and maybe it depends, on the type of or program, what that structure looks like depends on the type of program. There isn't a cookie cutter model. It depends on the demographic of person that you're serving. It depends on the stage of change that they're in. Like, it depends on all of these different things. I work with everything from programs that have really specific requirements for entry to incredible programs that don't require abstinence from drugs to be a part of their program. And so structure doesn't have to look exactly the same, right? And the priority needs to be dignity and at least creating choice where we can. I think we're getting a lot of questions like about minor stuff, and hopefully maybe I can answer, or we can answer a little bit about that at the end. But there's one program that we work with that is for minors, and so obviously these minors programs have to have a lot more structure than an adult program with really specific guidelines and requirements. And there is less room for choice than there is just naturally in a program that was specific for adults. And so one thing that they've done is when a youth intakes into this program, they have a binder full of like room decor, pictures of room decor, pictures of sheets, pictures of things they can hang on their wall, like what stuffed animals, like just come in and just choice. You maybe can't choose the fact that you're here. You maybe can't choose the fact that you have nowhere else to go. You maybe can't choose, all of these other things, but you can choose everything in here from day one. And I think like when we can have those things, it's great. Another conversation we have a lot is like around staffing models, and like if we have more structure around people, do they then do they If we have less structure, will people rise to the challenge? And sometimes that has worked. I have definitely seen programs that have gone less structure and it has allowed people more agency over their choice. Other programs, the program that we went to had a lot of structure, a lot
Yes.
of structure. And there were some ways that, like, I personally was somebody who needed a break from my phone and needed like not to have access for that to that phone for a while and detox from that and really benefited from that structure. So love all of these answers as well. I think we might come back. I'm just trying to keep us on track here. We might come back to some of those, to another question related to that in a minute. But I want to talk about building trust in congregate care because Andrea set us up with that, with the relationships over rules. But any further thoughts about what builds trust inside congregate care and what can break it? Victoria, you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Actually, you know what? Yeah, I do. I'm sorry, can you run that by me one more
Yeah,
time?
absolutely. What builds trust inside of programs and what breaks it?
Okay, so a few things that could build trust within the program is that when the individual, when she comes to you and she starts to give you her story, she's giving you
Mm,
her private, like just special story that is hers. And I think that if we keep that kind of stuff to ourselves, that she will feel like she can trust someone more with her story because she may not want everyone to know that that is her choice to share that because that is such a tender, a deep thing that she has. But I also think that you have to have truth and love as well. And sometimes having truth and love is telling the truth, telling the individual what is really going on.
yeah. Thanks, Victoria.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Being able to share your story and not hear it later on down the line through another staff member or hear it be being spoke about when you walk by or like something you opened up with and knowing that it was in confidence and then it be talked about when you're, you know what I mean, out of nowhere and you're like, hold on. I think that's a big trust breaker and it'll make you, especially like the life that we used to live, then we're like, okay, well, now do I have to watch my back? Do I have to figure out how to move? Like now I don't even know if I can really even trust anything going on here. Cause I know me, my brain will start snowballing, especially being new in program. Then you're like, oh my gosh, where do I run to? Who can I trust? It's the same place that I was before. And I think that has a lot. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yes, yes. I agree with the Victorias. I also wanted to add, Dina Montgomery is on this call. She trained me when I first started at the Wellspring Living Women's Residential Program. And she told me, so a lot of years ago, she told me, because I'm like, what do I do? I wanted to do everything and, help everybody and be there all the time. And
Yeah.
she said, chill out. I don't know if those were the exact words she used, but she said, give them time to check you out. Don't ask a bunch of questions. Don't, where'd you come from? Did you eat? Did you just say, here's the food. You're welcome to get whatever you want. Here's our program schedule. I'll be in the living room. Let me know. But I think sometimes we get excited when new people come and we're like, tell me your story, right? I think that's a way that we break trust, right? Victoria talked about if the survivor shares her story, that's one thing. But if we're digging and asking a lot of really deep questions on day one, week one, on the intake form, I am honored to serve on the Safe House Project Certification Review Board. And we look at intakes. And sometimes programs have questions like, how many abortions have you had? That's not a question set that's not a way to build trust with somebody. That is a way to automatically break trust. Victoria mentioned they're in my business. I need to be careful what I share because nothing is safe here. So I think those are a few ways, but that I constantly use that. Let them check you out. Just give them some space. and some time. Sometimes the program schedule doesn't work that day because there's all the things going on. And if we force the program schedule to still go forward because rules over relationships, we lose trust, right? So I can think of an example when I was in the women's residential program. This was a long time ago and we've come a long way. I came in October. It's actually like October 15th was the 2008 was the day we never forget, do we, ladies? Was the day I went into the Wellspring Living program. And about a month later, we were talking about shopping for Thanksgiving. And we were on a very strict schedule, but I hadn't celebrated a holiday in over 10 years. And I just wanted to shop for turkeys. I could have done that all day. I didn't care about the schedule. I just was so excited that I would get to finally shop for a freaking turkey. I know it sounds silly, me telling the story now. I was so excited. And I didn't get to go to the Thanksgiving shopping because we only take two people, rules. There was all the rules, and I wasn't one of the two people that got to go. And nobody asked me why it was so important to me. And it took me a long time to rebuild the trust with that particular staff person that had chose the rules and the structure over me celebrating Thanksgiving for the first time in over 10 years. It took a long time to rebuild that trust, where it might have took an extra hour, but that would have been what I needed in that moment. And it wasn't written in any rule book or policy book anywhere. So that's why I say that a lot and go back to that a lot. Shout out to Dina Montgomery. Thank you for that, Dina.
Yeah, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. I'm sure each of us probably have a moment that we remember where a rule was prioritized. And I think when I look back, I don't know that I don't know how you feel, but in those moments that I can think of in my own experience, I don't know that I would have had the language to even really explain why this felt so disempowering, right? Because we're so early in our journey usually when we're in these spaces. I want to ask another question kind of about building trust. And I want to frame this by saying, just to clarify, because there was a question in the chat or in the Q&A about this too. Safe House Project is not a faith-based organization, but more than 70% of anti-trafficking orgs, specifically those that operate like Safe Homes and Congregate Care, are faith-based. And so we see the intersection of this congregate care and housing space and faith-based organizations. We see that that is a big intersection. And it is a place where trust can be built or trust can be broken in regards to faith practices as well. And so I want to kind of just touch on that or open up that conversation in case anybody has any specific thoughts, knowing that there's going to be so many orgs that fall into that space that are on the call. What are your thoughts on how to integrate faith or how like faith-based elements are integrated into programming with or without creating judgment or coercion? Go ahead, Victoria. Bounce.
So I think that is a a thin line that's you may cross, but I don't feel that we should be pressuring anyone about faith. I feel like that is my relationship with God, and He grows that relationship as it starts to progress, as it starts to bloom. Not someone trying to force the relationship or telling me that, well, we are a faith-based organization, so we have to do, you know, whatever it is that they have to do. I feel that sometimes the faith is forced and therefore it's not received the right way. Like some of the survivors are like, oh, I want to be baptized, but they have no idea what baptism really means. All they see is that another girl got celebrated for baptism and she was feeling down and lonely. And you know what? She wanted to be celebrated too.
Of course. Yeah. Of course. Because why wouldn't you want to be celebrated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it can lead to some experiences that are maybe not what that person would have chosen had they had other opportunities to be celebrated outside of faith. Go ahead, Andrea.
I think that was great what Victoria said. That happens all the time. And I think too, the way that I look at the work we do and the way that I try, because it's hard when people don't meet the goals that you thought they should have, or have the relationship that you think, or go to church a certain number of times, or come to Proverbs in the morning, right? And so the way that we look at the work at Wellspring Living is we are here to plant seeds, right? We are not always the waterers. We are hardly ever there to see the fruit that is bared, which is really hard as a human being, but that's God's responsibility. I am a strong believer in God. I love Jesus. I would not be sitting here without him. I don't talk like that when I'm at work and when I'm with the ladies. I operate and model in a way that they want to ask questions. Why are you so doggone happy all the time? And I'm like, it's the joy of the Lord in my heart, like finding ways to create conversations where they ask you something and it's not me forcing something. You should go to church. Your dress is too short, your heels are too high, or whatever judgment comes around clothing. You see the nods. Clothing comes out a lot when we have these conversations about faith. But I think that is the way that I've been able to, and it's not easy. I want to be clear and say that it's a delicate line, and I've had to go back and apologize for times that I stepped over that line. I shouldn't have, said that to you. I shouldn't have, that was, or it was the wrong time or the wrong place or whatever. So being humble and being able to say when you've stepped over the line. But for me, and for a lot of the members on my team, we're planting seeds and we can't control the outcomes. Everybody heals and recovers on their own time. Some of us, get to a certain place in a year, and some of us it takes 20 years to get to that same place. Depends on where we started from and what kind of resources we have along the way. So that's a way that I've learned how to balance by just planting seeds.
Thank you, Andrea. Go ahead, B.
I agree with that part, the planting the seeds part. I was at a faith-based program as well. More recently, I graduated in 2023. So I feel like it's more seeds planting. When I went in, I knew it was a faith-based program. I had been there already before, graduated prior, but didn't have a heart change. So when I went back the second time, I was ready, I already knew what it was about, but there was the other girls that came in that were more, okay, wait, Jesus, like I'm not here for that. I'm not here for that. And then me being able to come alongside them and be like, okay, it's okay. Like, yeah. And then telling the other staff, like, don't drill it into her too much. Like, don't force it. If she's going to find God, then she's going to find him on her own, and just having that patience with them. But it is a very thin line between feeling like you're forced to fall into a religion, or are you coming alongside me and you're wanting to help me, or are you going to help me because you want to look good for said, faith-based program, because there is rules, like you said, that are put in place. I remember we weren't allowed to go to a certain place because it wouldn't look good to donors, and that was something that kind of really bothered me, especially with, having teen girls. I need to take them to certain places, and I can't if it doesn't look good to the donors. And that just was something that I think is big for a faith-based program too, to kind of not put so much on the girls because you need that, to look good. I don't even know how to, I don't know if I'm having it say it correctly. I'm trying
Yeah,
so
placing,
to use the word.
rules or moral rules around things that are not
Yes.
applicable. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, because I didn't know how else to say
No,
it,
you're
but
making,
yes,
I
you
think we're
guys
all
get
picking
it.
up what you're putting down and
Yeah.
the appearance instead of, yeah. And I think that is a big one. And we need to remember that the things that we're teaching people about, like finding their spirituality, whatever that may be, and figuring that out, like they're going to leave with those ideas, and then they're not going to have and they're not going to have people telling them, and they're going to maybe need to have to deconstruct some of those things if they weren't their own like experiences or their own things that they came to through their own spiritual walk. Like I remember leaving program and thinking like, is it okay for me to wear leggings? Like there were so many things that were not moral that had been placed on as like part of healing, that like learning like, oh, it's okay. Like I'm not going to go back to the life just because I wear leggings. Like these kinds of things that we had to learn. And like what did, yeah, what was put on us actually for safety and to help us grow, and what was put on us to kind of legislate morality and based around like people's cultural experiences with religion. Go ahead, Andrea.
Yes, yes. And no, you're not going to go back to the
I'm
life.
not.
You are proving that you won't go back to the life if you wear leggings. Please tell me you have leggings on today.
I wish. They're really tight jeans, if that helps, though.
So as we were talking just now, Alia, I thought about some of the programs that we've seen that actually have faith requirements in order to move through the program. And Andrea Hipwell, I'm not speaking on behalf of Wellspring Living, would strongly discourage any movement of the program that's related to somebody's faith journey because it's so subjective. There's no way we will ever know that. I've seen, I can't even think of an example right now, but there are some programs that are faith-based programs that have those faith requirements to move through. And I think there's other ways that you can, if you would like to, there's other ways that you can check in on somebody's faith journey without having it be like a program requirement and how you move through the program.
Yeah, their spiritual development. Yeah, and the time that they're taking to have spiritual development on their own terms, right? Yeah. Okay, I want to move over to the next question. What about life after program? We've all had to transition post like structured care. What actually helps people heal? Like what services are actually really helpful and what helps prepare for life after? Go ahead, V.
I housing, some type of transitional way to where, like, even if it's like transitional living, someplace that you can go as soon as you graduate to where you're not feeling like you're getting booted out into the streets. That's big, because the first thing that we're thinking when we get closer to graduating, and I know I was, is what am I going to do if there is no place for me and my kids to go? My brain is going to automatically go back to the first thing that I know that I can make money doing. And it's scary not to have that. I think that that's a big thing, is to have some type of transitional program after your program, like be it like how like a sober living setting or something, just so that you can start getting back into the groove of being, out of the life,
Yeah.
having that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. On Andrea, I see yours, but I saw Victoria Cashwell bounce and mute earlier. So, Victoria, go ahead.
So I have seen programs before, like how you were saying, we don't want them to just graduate and then just boom, just put them back out there with no skills or anything. But I saw something in a program one time and I thought it was really cool. So this program had like five phases. We'll say it's five. One was like your preliminary where everybody's getting acquainted for your first 30 days. And then you start going through the different levels. And once you get to like, say, level 4, they have a step down apartment inside of that residential home where you learn how to cook your meals, you go get your medications, you learn how to mail a letter. The Amazon guy comes and you get to meet him, you know? So I think it's all in how you, how, like, how you move forward with the survivor, because you want her to thrive. You don't want her to fail. And then most of us, we've forgotten how to be like legitimate business women, okay? Because of the life that we had to live before. And like you were saying, you're absolutely correct. You're gonna go for the first thing that you know. And I know how to do that. So I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea?
I wanted to add, I think what helps that was not in the program I went through, but it is now, is yes to aftercare, but also like the step down within the program, like Victoria was talking about. At Wellspring Living, we have like a first phase that's about 90 days long. And then we have what we call independent living within the home. And so that's when you can start applying for jobs.
Yeah.
You pay a fee, they get it back, but you start practicing that skill of, so I think the shortened way to say that is any real life things you can mimic inside the program to prepare them for what they're going to have to do when they get out of the program is always helpful.
Yeah.
And it's the timing. I think I go back to like ask them what the good timing is and make that determination together. But it's not all the survivors saying what the time is or all the staff saying what the time is. It's a together conversation. Aftercare, yes. Staying in touch, alumni events. Ali has probably heard this from me, but I thought the Lord was calling me to create all these spaces for survivors and, host all these things. And about 2 years ago, he was like, you missed the part where I told you I don't want you in the spaces. And I was like, what? And so it's just creating places for survivors to gather. Maybe I'm there sometimes, maybe I'm not. But I think organizations have a responsibility to create those things for people then to do what they want with them, right? It's not always the staff that then come in and control the space, but there has to be spaces where survivors can continue to gather. We're going to start like a community moment for our adult participants next year, like our aftercare program where they can get online once a month and see each other and check in on those kind of things are going to help people continue on their road to success, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is one thing I've definitely felt like it was so lacking, this support system that you gain while you're in the program. They become mom, aunt, sister, like at the staff, the other residents, like they become your family. And then when you move into independence, they're oftentimes focused on the residents that they have, which makes absolute sense, but becomes really difficult because you lose your support system, or you went from having therapy every week to now you've graduated and you no longer have therapy anymore covered, right? Those things can be really challenging transitions. V, I see you unmuted.
I had seen somebody in the questions pop up and say that they have case management for a lifetime. That is so important. I have been struggling. I have not had a case manager since I've graduated program, and I have been fighting and searching and looking, and I know how important it is. And I have been, like I said, I've been out of the game for since 2022, and I know I need a case manager. I know for a fact I need a case manager, and that is something so big to offer after programming, to have that. And I'm still searching for it. I would somebody That's beautiful. If you implement that in your program, that's going to be the best thing
Yeah.
for the girls, honestly.
Yeah. Lifetime case management would be so helpful as we navigate differences and changes in lives and all of those things. I want to kind of transition us over to some questions. And you may notice if you entered a question, I'm not going to have time to get each of these to our panel. So I'm just going to pull out some of the ones that I think are most applicable, but I am going to save them and see if I can get answers to your questions and email them out when we email out the resources and things like that next week. So know that I'm going to try and get you an answer to your question, even if it's not answered in the next 8 minutes. But this was a great question from Nikki, and she was wondering about the physical space that you lived in or what you've learned in your professional lives about the physical space and what helps or hurts. Have you found like that a more pristine space is more helpful, a more comfortable space? Were there specific things that you found to be really helpful or help people be more comfortable in their space? Victoria Cashwell, I see you unmuted.
Yes. So the things in the spaces are very important because that is like that is the entry point on how you get to talk to the survivor. Whether there's snacks, whether there's a blanket, whether there is just a space where she just needs to decompress. Like not, she doesn't need to talk to anybody. She just needs the room, like with some good lighting and a snack. It just needs to decompress a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. My brain just it
No, let me know if it comes back to you.
okay.
Yeah, no worries. Just unmute again if it comes back to you. Andrea or V? Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a really, really great question.
It is.
I think, because I was in residential care a long time ago, and the house was perfect and pristine. And I felt this way. I'm like, can I sit on this? This doesn't feel comfortable. It's really pretty, but it doesn't feel like I can like really hang out here. Like, are you sure I live here? So I think a balance of like comfortable and presentable, pretty. But I think also something I want to say here is make sure the home is prepared for the people who live there, not your donors and the people who are going to come tour there.
Ooh. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Alia, you said I could say anything.
You can say anything you want. I'm glad you said it. I'll just say when I do a certification site visit or I'm visiting a program for one reason or another, I'm always trying, if the people who live in the home as clients or as residents are there, I'm always trying to thank them for letting me be in their space. Like not just the program, but like as I walk in, I'm like, hey ladies, thanks for letting me like come peek around. Thanks for letting me into your home. Like, yeah, and giving ownership in that way.
There,
V? Or go ahead, Andrea,
I'm
finish and then
sorry,
we'll
I
say to
don't
me.
mean to interrupt anybody. It may or may not, well, I've seen programs that all the comforters are exactly the same. Where is the individuality with that? That is for your tour people. That is for your funders. You want it to look all uniform. And when I visit programs, if it looks like that, I automatically turn off because I'm just like, who lives here? Aren't they messy? Did they leave a blanket around? Like it looks so perfect,
Yeah.
So, sorry.
No, go ahead, V.
I agree 100% with Victoria and Andrea. Letting it be a home for those that are there. Like how you said with the girls, how you go into the minor programs and they have like the binder where you can pick. That is so important, especially when you weren't having that choice. Where we went in there, most of us had no choice over anything. I didn't even have a choice over what I could eat during the day. I didn't have a choice over what I can wear. So to be able to go someplace where I'm supposed to be feeling free and have everything dictated, like you said, the matching comforters, this has to be like this has to be like that, then it takes away a sense of freedom. It takes away
Yeah.
that sense of me being able to grow and wanting to be able to be a new person, like they, especially in a faith-based program, I want to be a new creation in Christ, but I want to be able to have that sense of I'm loved. They really love me. They give me this space to be poured into, to be loved, and to have the individuality to where I can really be home. Like you go into your room and you can have things on top of your dresser, and it's not like, oh no, you can't have anything there because it can't be there, or your bed has to be made. I get having your bed made. I have, like I said, I have five kids. Your bed has to be made, but
Listen, my bed
we're
is
not
not
in a
made right now, and I'm thriving. And my bed
okay.
is
I
not
was like, because
made.
I think mine is totally not made right now, and my son's bed is horrible right now, but we are doing it, girl. Like we're
Yeah.
here, and the bed not being made is not going to make me go back. It's
Yeah.
not going to.
I think that's so important. And we're coming to the end, but I want to I chose this question because I think it's so important. And I think there's so many conversations that can to happen about the physical space. And one thing that I just want to say is like, and not that people need to live in the Ritz by any means, right? And some, like Andrea said, can be uncomfortable in some ways. But also, I can't speak to other people's lived experience, but my own was that a lot of what kept me in exploitation was wanting to provide a livable life to my kids and myself. And is something that I felt like I couldn't do outside of exploitation, and that people who were benefiting from that exploitation used those lines and that draw to continue to manipulate me of like, well, what are you going to do? Go live in a shelter with your kids? What are you going to do? Like, at least here you have this, at least here you have that. And like, that was a consistent draw for me. And so living in a program that was like, oh, I've never lived somewhere this beautiful. Like, what do you mean that you need nothing from me in order for me to have these things that I've only ever had through exploitation, and that these are actually nicer, not meaning that they were ridiculously expensive, but that they were clean and they matched, and like there was like, fitted sheet, comforter, pillow sham, like decorative pillow, like those kinds of things, and that nothing about exploitation like had to come in to receive those things. That was really validating and really special. And had I been in a place or in other instances, because I had, like many of us, had multiple experiences with congregate care actually by the time that I actually was in and exited through shelters, through group homes as a minor and all of these things, had other experiences where I thought I could provide a better life for myself and my kids outside of this program, outside of this space. And this isn't where I want to grow up, or I want them to grow up. And so I do think that the physical space really matters. And with that, we have to come to a close because I'm sure many of us have meetings at this hour, but there are so many great questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these questions out. I'm going to send them to our panelists, and if they have the space and time, or there's ones that they really want to answer, they will write up answers. If there's some that lack answers, we will take them as a team and try and put together some resources and answers for you all and send out the answers to that as a whole early next week. But I do want to just say thank you to Andrea and Victoria Bounds and Victoria Miller for your transparency, for your willingness. This was vulnerable. As much as like I try and make space that we only speak from our professional experience if we want to, it's so hard to separate them. And we always are going to go back into those places of lived experience. So I just want to like thank you guys for your vulnerability and your willingness to be vulnerable in this space, because we know that these are such important conversations, and you can see we don't ever get this many questions on a webinar. Like, people want to hear from you all about what you see to be helpful. And so I hope that we can get those questions answered offline and bring them back. And hopefully, if you didn't get your question answered, maybe you want to ask them specifically what the answer to that would be, or bring on a contractor who has lived experience in congregate care to be able to feed into your program and answer some of these things. It's an honor. I know when I get to do those, many of us on this panel have had the opportunity to do that in contractual positions. So I encourage you to do that as well if you're feeling really hungry for those answers in that conversation, and happy to refer people who might be good fits for the types of programs you're building or looking at. There's more of us that are those that are just on this call as well. So I just want to thank you again, panelists, for your willingness, and thank our attendees for their commitment to their ongoing education and their own core competence. And hopefully I'll see you next month. We're talking about organizational responses to burnout and wellness. So really excited to bring that on as well. Should be really helpful. And I look forward to seeing you all there. So again, thank you, Victoria, and Andrea, for your willingness today. And I'll see you all later.